All right, guys, we're gonna get started. This is really loud. A couple things for housekeeping. One, assignment as usual. There's one due today. We weren't planning on having an assignment this week, but a lot of people are behind on assignments, so we made one. As usual, the assignments are optional, so if you've been keeping up, you probably don't need to do this. And I understand Thanksgiving break, so feel free to not do it. But it'll be helpful if you want to. But yeah, we added an assignment this week if you want to catch up. So it should be at the end of lecture. Two, so CFE wanted us to pass this information down. There's this screening of a movie called Generation Startup happening on November 29th, which is next Tuesday after Thanksgiving break. I'll send out emails on Canvas in an announcement. It should be interesting. I haven't seen it, but yeah, it's about startups working in Detroit over 2 years, just about that journey. I'll send out details afterwards, though. And then finally, jam session. So we'll have our second last jam session the week after we get back from Thanksgiving. It's on Wednesday from 6:30 to 8:30 as usual, and it'll be at Duo Security, which is a little far out, but I think it's totally worth it, and you all should come. Duo Security is a huge company in Ann Arbor and does a lot of awesome things. So I totally recommend you all coming. We'll send out details as soon as possible, but yeah, keep that on your calendars for Wednesday after Thanksgiving break. And then the word of the day, is beats. Cool. Have a good Thanksgiving break.
Hey everybody. Has anybody seen this movie? Back Her? Quite a few. I watched it a couple weeks ago. I really liked it. If you don't know about it, it's about this guy who buys an artificial intelligence sort of assistant that is a computer that sits in his ear. And the assistant has a lot of personality. And after talking with her, the assistant, for a few minutes, he falls in love with her, and it's about the love story that he goes through. You never see the face of the assistant. Obviously, there's no face. It's really cool as a sci-fi movie because it shows what I think is a pretty realistic vision of what our future might look like with a lot more artificial intelligence, but without aliens and laser guns and spaceships. It's pretty, as you can see from this screenshot, he's wearing normal clothing in a normal place. But the smile he has on his face, it's like a smile of a man who's in love, and he's in love with the computer. And the real question the movie talks about is isn't it weird how you can have these weird emotional connections to machines? And could we ever create a machine that has such a compelling personality and emotion that we can actually fall in love with it? We're not going to be building love robots today, obviously, but the point of this lecture is emotion and feeling in design. We showed this bar graph, I suppose. It's not bar graph. Progress bar. A lot of the early part of the semester, we were talking about things that are useful and usable, but delight and all the other feelings that you get when you're looking at a design are what we're talking about today. So we're going to talk about a few ways that you can inspire delight or whatever feeling you want to inspire in users. Some examples of that, a couple sort of high-level principles, and some resources that you can use when you want to do that. We're also going to go over one of my own side projects. I'll just show you some of the early sort of rough designs that I did and what I ended up with. It's pretty simple, just a couple pages, but it kind of gives you an insight into the actual creative process of making something all the way through to a visual design. Okay, so the first thing is writing. This is a topic that I think is something a lot of designers struggle with. Something a lot of designers try to ignore too sometimes. It's definitely something I've struggled with and still do. And I like to save it for last, and I don't know if that's always the right thing, but a lot of your app is going to be made up of copy. I think Kelsey mentioned last time that somebody has this theory that 95% of good web design is typography. It's because when you're getting information online, a lot of what you're doing is reading, and the words matter. Now, if you're making a website, you might be using somebody else's content, but if you're making an app, a lot of the content's going to come from users. The content that has to do with the navigation of that app is content that you are going to write. And although really good apps, you don't really recognize that writing, it's because they've done a really good job. So here's an example of 2 error messages that could come up when you're making an app. 1, error, could not load resource from server. And 2, whoops, something broke. Sorry about that. Which one do you guys like better? Back?
Second one.
Second one? Why is that?
Sounds like you're talking to a human.
Yeah, it sounds like you're talking to a human, which you are when you're writing for your app. Doesn't necessarily feel obvious because you're typing it into a computer, but if you're typing it in, it's because somebody else is going to read that thing. One thing I don't like about the second one is that it doesn't really give as much information about the system. Visibility is a good principle to follow when you're designing something. You want them to know what's going on. But number 1, could not load resource from server. You have to know a lot about computers, frankly, to understand what that means. You'd be surprised how little most people know about what a client and a server is when computers are talking to each other. So for most people, even though it's more visible, it's not really that helpful. I also think that second one really is speaking how you would speak exactly to a human being. And it's acknowledging that something isn't going great, and you're using words that you would use, like that I would use maybe when talking to you right now. This is a really good resource for writing. It's by MailChimp. Carson actually worked at MailChimp. Whoa. I don't know what's going on here. That's delightful. This is a great resource because it goes over a bunch of copy examples. At the top, it's not the example for the copy. That's actually what they think is going on in the user's head. So MailChimp is a system that you can send a lot of emails out to your users. So the person who's sending these emails thinks, I finished this week's campaign, now I can enjoy the weekend. So MailChimp, knowing that the user is feeling relief, pride, joy, anticipation, writes copy that says, fine piece of work, you deserve a raise. MailChimp is actually a really good example of a company that uses personality in everything that they do, from their copy to the imagery, as we'll see. This whole website has a lot more about what MailChimp is, and they've actually developed this whole personality. So whenever you read something coming from MailChimp, it has that same feel. This is maybe one of the best pieces of advice I could give you. This actually came up twice when we were preparing for this lecture. Just write how you talk. Again, don't write server encountered error 400. Just say, hey, something went wrong. We're sorry about that. We're working on fixing it right away. If you're trying to explain to somebody how to do something, like, hey, you can click here to see a list of all your recent posts versus recent post index or something. Man, I've had to use this when I started teaching. It's been a little tough. I spent a solid couple minutes trying to figure out how to log in. Does anybody know what the login button is here? Well, it's under employee self-service in the top left. And you can tell that because underneath there's a thing that says more information. It's expanded here, but originally it was collapsed. It says, to view something, it's a little blurry here, use employee self-service. This is probably a rough design for a lot of reasons. The emphasis on the most common task is not right there. There's a log out button for some reason. I'm not the main thing that I felt like is that nobody reads. Nobody actually reads that much of what you're doing. In fact, if you're reading a website, observe where your eye's going. You're generally scanning. You're reading words as you go, but you're not reading every single word. Nobody reads a website or an app like they read a book, where you start in the upper left and you just sort of go down. It takes so long to go between web pages. Your eye bounces around to different emphasized areas because of the principles we talked about the other week. Things that are big, things that have big colors. And then you sort of focus in on that area and you read the smaller text around it. So all this stuff, I still haven't read this. I put it in a presentation, but nobody ever is going to sit down and read every single one of these items. So when you're using text, don't use too much because, I hate to break it to you, nobody's going to read it. This is another interesting example. These are 2 buttons that you could click on a web form. One would be submit, and the other one would be get my free send. The one on the left is a little spammy, okay, maybe it's a little bit too much, hey, I want you to buy this thing. But what I like about it is that it's really telling you what you're doing when you click that button. Again, you're talking about the system that you're designing in terms of the user and what its benefit is to them, getting a Snuggie versus what the technology is doing, submitting a form. Action-oriented text. Okay, any questions or thoughts on writing? All right, Iconography. Iconography is interesting. This is Dropbox. It's my actual Dropbox. If you look at that menu on the left, this is a zoomed-in version. There's a navigation using text. Blue color indicates that it's clickable. The bold one indicates that this is the page that I'm on. But on the left, we have these icons. Dropbox is a really good example of pretty good iconography. Why have icons here? Yeah.
So you can just look and click instead of having to read what it is.
Yeah, he said, so you can just look and click instead of having to read what it is. And that's, I think, basically the answer. If you know that sharing is the rainbow, it's a lot easier to find the rainbow up here than it is to like look through all these items and find sharing. But if you don't know that sharing is a rainbow or you haven't learned it yet, it's a little bit difficult. So obviously, Dropbox has chosen to choose icons along with text. Just pretend for a second, like put your hand up, that there wasn't any text next to those, and you had to figure out like how to get to recent stuff. Well, the clock is a good guess, but maybe the paper would be a pretty good idea too. Even if you figured it out, you might have to try a couple things. Hopefully they don't do something you didn't expect. So you got to be a little careful with icons. Here's another example. This is from an article from a group called Information Architects. There's 3 examples of a menu for an email application. At the top is just icons. There's like a sort of lightning bolt end looking one. And at the bottom, that's just labels. You can see that take accounts offline. Actually, I don't know exactly what that does, but it's a lot more clear than the lightning bolt. And in the middle, you have both. So you got to be a little bit careful about where you choose to use iconography and where you choose to use labels. These are 2 real examples from Gmail. They moved, I think, from the top one to the bottom one, and there were actually a lot of people complaining about it. Once you get used to the idea that the box with the arrow is archived, it makes a lot of sense. But it's kind of tough. It's kind of tough to tell what's going on here. Trash, I think, is a pretty common one. But folders and labels over there, it may take a little bit of thinking to figure out what that does. Keep in mind, like the classic save icon from older computers is a floppy disk. I haven't seen a floppy disk in like 15 years. Some of you guys probably never used floppy disks, right? So the icons we choose are sort of like loosely associated with these tasks, but they're not super dependable. Here's a couple examples. This is Instagram on the left. None of these icons do anything really dangerous, and it's pretty obvious. Home is where you go when you want to browse your stream of Instagram stuff. There's a search icon, camera icon for taking a picture, likes, and a picture of you for your profile. But Spotify did something slightly different. They added the text underneath the icons too. They're pretty close, but if you look at the far right there, your library is just some lines. I guess it's like a bunch of books or a bunch of records being stacked, but it's not super clear. So if you have users that like menu items are really obvious, consider the Instagram approach. Otherwise, it's usually good to have labels. Does anybody know what progressive enhancement is? It's this idea in web design. It's a technical idea that you can keep adding features for browsers that don't support them. And if the feature isn't supported, it won't break the user's experience. But if it is, it'll help it. So a lot of these things like writing, well, not so much writing, but icons and pictures, which we're going to talk about in a second, these are sort of like things that enhance the experience for users. But if they're not there, they shouldn't break the experience. Here's some good places to get icons. This is Icon Finder. There's a lot of free ones. There's some paid ones that are usually $1. You can filter by size. Noun Project is a great place to get icons. We've used this a bunch. Material Design Guidelines. Material is Google's design language. These are all free to use. They come in a bunch of different sizes. You can change colors. A lot of these come in like SVG format so that you can put them right into Sketch and tweak them and change them and make them your own color. So these are the go-to places to find those. Any questions or thoughts on icons? Okay. Illustration. This is a really good illustration. It's one of my favorites. Basecamp is a really awesome company. They have a lot of really good writing and speaking about building apps and design. This is their current homepage. Go to basecamp.com. Basecamp helps you organize information. I think this picture does a really good job at explaining the feeling you might have when you need Basecamp and the value that Basecamp gives you, which is to not have this feeling that your hair is literally on fire. This is like a woman running away from fire of like phones ringing, emails, Slack pings, long email chains. like there are a lot of drawings in apps, but generally the rule of thumb with a drawing is that an illustration should actually illustrate something, illustrate a concept, right? So here we're illustrating the pain that you're feeling. They could have written about that pain, and a lot of websites do on this homepage, but a picture is just getting that across so much better. These are some other illustrations that are a little bit more on the decorative side. Google Calendar, if you sign up for a painting class or something, it'll show paint. It shows the months are often decorated with sort of like, these little activities that go on in the background. They don't really express a ton of meaning. They're not really that useful, but they make it feel that you're not just staring at a white screen. Gives it a little bit of delay. These are some website illustrations also from Google, Firebase, that I kind of like. This is an illustration on GitHub. You might be familiar with this, but if you go to a repo that doesn't exist anymore or you're not signed in and it's a private repo, you'll see this. One way to think about adding delight to your apps is to sometimes doing an illustration, this takes a really long time, especially if you want to get it right. So you kind of want to be careful about where you spend your time. The best places I found to spend time on things like illustrations and photography are like the most important moments in the user's life in your application. This is an important moment because they tried to do something and it didn't work. And usually when I hit this page, I'm a little pissed off because I'd have to figure out something new. So to see this makes it a little bit better. It's a well-placed illustration. When I'm on a main repo page, if you're used to GitHub, and I just know what I need, if there's an illustration in the way, it's kind of annoying because I just know what I need to get there. So this is well-placed. The other two really important places to emphasize delight are the first time somebody signs up. So that first moment when they put in their email address or they click sign in with Google or sign in with Facebook and they get to your app and they're about to do that first thing, you want to pay a lot of attention to that moment. The other really good place to pay attention to adding delight is when they're about to buy something. Because putting in your credit card is a pretty big deal. So adding delight there is a good idea. Here's another example. This is Dropbox. They're also kind of famous for illustrations. This is their 404 page. You can see it's really simple and straightforward, but it's kind of got this meaning too. There's a drop box, but it's got these really bizarre angles. It's sort of an impossible shape. Any thoughts on illustrations? This obviously isn't an art class, so we're not going to go into how to go about doing a ton of illustrations, but we're happy to talk about it afterwards. We do that a lot. Okay. We'll do that. Photography. This is a lot like illustration. This is another example of MailChimp. There's a mascot. What's the mascot's name?
Freddy.
Freddy. Is it Chimp, obviously? Freddy the Chimp? This Freddy. Apparently, if you turn around, he's got butt cheeks. But Freddy's got a lot of personality. He appears in a lot of different places. So if you're about to log into MailChimp, you're going to see this. This changes seasonally. This is the 404 page, just like GitHub with Freddy. He's in a swamp. It's terrifying. These are a bunch of stock photos. Definitely want to avoid these. Stock photos are super weird. There were a lot I was going to actually put on this slide that I had to take out because they were so inappropriate that I couldn't show them in class. But just as a general rule, people are going to know that there's stock photography if you use stock photography. There's one photo shoot that somebody did sometime where they took a farmer and a laptop out into a field and they took a bunch of pictures of that farmer on a field with their laptop, and every stock photo site has it. We actually have a name for this guy in FarmLogs because every new agency that comes to work with us gives us a picture and yeah, you went to stock photos, you searched farmer laptop, you got that guy. It's not unique. It's not a real genuine feeling. I'm not getting a feeling that oh, this is FarmLogs and it knows me. So try to avoid stock photography. The best way to get photos by far is to take the photo of a real user. You can put their name in the bottom and a little quote by them, or just to you all got cameras. You probably have pretty good cameras on your phone. If you don't want to take your own photos, you're trying to get something quickly, Unsplash is the classic go-to example. There's a ton of photos on here. They're searchable. They're all free to use with no licensing fees. You can actually contribute to them if you want to as well. Another good one is Stocksy. It's stock photography, but it's not as cheesy as the other services. Any thoughts on photography or questions? Great. Animation. Really wish we had more time to cover some details of animation. It's a pretty new thing in product design to focus a lot on animation in your app, especially like transitions and gestures, obviously, on mobile devices. But we're going to show you a couple quick things that I think will give you a good idea. Does anybody recognize this? It's Jurassic Park, where she's in the car and there's like the T-Rex about to eat her. She gets away. But the example, like, there's actually a scene earlier in the movie where they're talking about T-Rex versus Velociraptor or something, and the main character kneels down to this kid and says, like, you freeze because you think that T-Rex's or Velociraptor vision works like T-Rex. And then if you don't move, it can't see you. But the guy can see it anyway. The point is that if you move, or something moves, you're going to look at it. Like if I'm going like this, you're going to see it. Even if you're not staring at it directly, if it's in the corner of your vision, like you're going to see it. So you want to use movement pretty sparingly. You want to direct people's attention with movement, just like you do with color and size. Don't just be making stuff move all over the place, but like a really subtle movement in the right place can be really powerful. Here's a good example. This is the Twitter heart animation when you like something on Twitter. And this is like a moment of emotion, right? Like you're trying to encourage people to engage with your service, even if they're not tweeting. So that moment you hit it, whoosh, like love. I just feel love when I click this. Maybe that's weird. But it's a really engaging animation. This is every frame of that animation. And you can see it's difficult to build these things, but it's not magic. When you touch it, the heart disappears into a red dot. There's like a circle that expands out. Then these sort of confetti pieces rotate around the heart, and the heart grows and comes out. And this is what it looks like when it all comes together. It's pretty straightforward. This stuff takes a lot of time, but it can be learned. And we'll give you a couple of resources about how to do it. Before I do that, though, there's a really cool video I want to show you really quickly. There's no sound. But this is a video that shows some basic principles of from Disney animators. And it's just it's a cube that's been animated in a couple different ways. So squash and stretch, you can see that it's really had this exaggerated, elongated piece that's showing where its movement is going. Anticipation, right before it does something, it sort of does the opposite thing just a little bit to indicate what it's about to do. Staging, this just sort of means setting the scene before you do something. It's a little hard to describe, but straight ahead and pose. This is just sort of talking about animating between general shapes. I think you can see that they did that really smoothly here. I think it's talking about something else, but I'm not 100% sure what, so I'll leave that aside. Follow through and overlapping. Pretty self-explanatory. Slow in, slow out. This is actually one that's really common when you're building transitions for UI. You can see when it gets started, it's very slow, and when it stops, it's really slow, but in the middle, it's really quick. This is often sometimes called easing in design. So you can set a function that actually describes how something is going to move when it's going from one place to another. You'll see an example of that in a second, too. But there are some easing functions that are a lot more natural and others that aren't. This is a pretty cool one. You can see these boxes really have a lot of personality to them right now, but I'm not sure exactly how you might use that in user interfaces. Again, a lot of this has to do with timing and getting the timing right and the transition in timing so that it feels natural. I'll let the rest of this play out. A tool that's really useful, I think, when you're trying to learn to actually build UI animation is a tool called Principle. So here's a little demo video of Principle. You can see actually the UI in the demo video is animated too. But basically, you can take the output from Sketch, drag it into Principle here, and take these individual aspects of your user interface and animate them like this. So taking this plus and rotating it around what it's going to do is when you click that first screen and you hit that second screen, it's going to use an easing function, like I talked about, to animate the rotation from that to that. And you can see if they stagger it, you can get really detailed and do a lot of, those are the easing functions right there. A lot of fine work with animation in something like Principal, and you can see it on your phone. This is all something that was not coded at all. This is something that you guys could try and play with yourself if you want to create really cool animations. Again, that action right there, clicking plus to add a new thing to the app, that's probably the most important aspect of this app, right? So they really want to focus their delight around that moment. We use Principal, one of my interns actually, Sid, who is here, used Principal in a design jam to build like a really cool interactive way to view imagery on a mobile device. Like we had to use gestures to really zoom in on very specific fields on a phone, which is, it's really tight because you don't have a lot of screen real estate. So that was a really cool tool for us to be able to really nail those details. Any thoughts or questions on animation? Okay, let's just go over a couple general high-level concepts for all the stuff we talked about. We talked about this a little bit already. Give meaning to the things you're doing. Like, this isn't just a picture of somebody working, right? They could have done an illustration of an office, but they really picked something that had a lot of meaning to the person in the moment they were seeing this, which is that they're stressed, they're trying to figure out a way to give their company a way to solve like their disorganization. Another meaning is often like if you're swiping between things, you can have things animate from another place. That indicates that they're sort of elsewhere. But maybe if you tap something and you want to show that something lives inside that thing, like if you're tapping an article and a list of articles and you want to zoom in to those lists of articles, you could zoom into it. You can use animation to sort of give meaning. The actual shape of the animation sort of implies the semantic relationship between the things that your first state and your second state. Less is more. It's pretty straightforward. This is a pretty straightforward error page. It looks nice. You don't need to go overboard. Most of the screen is white. There's only two colors. Focus on those important moments. We already talked about that. This is an important moment for Twitter users. Don't get in the way. So although I like that Dropbox page, I like this 404 page a little bit better because not only does it show you like this fun moment when you're having this annoying frustration, but you also have a search box at the bottom to help you actually find the thing that you were looking for in the first place. So illustration and fun stuff is okay, but like if your animation is dancing in front of the user interface and they can't actually use it, just make sure to avoid that. And also show some personality, like a lot of this stuff is pretty dry. Just like have some fun with it. Don't be afraid to get weird. Remember, like the goal here is that you're trying to create a sense of tranquility or happiness or curiosity or whatever the case may be. Whatever the personality for your app is, you want to sort of make your user have that face. It's not like over the moon excited, but they should be satisfied. Using technology should be a human and enjoyable experience. Any thoughts on any of that? Okay, great. I'm going to spend a few minutes and actually show you guys a project that I worked on. This is just like a sort of a side project. And we're going to go through sort of like the visual design process I went through. Feel free to like just yell out if you have any questions. It's kind of like a real look that I actually did this semester during this class at like the process you might go through when you're creating a visual design. It's not perfect. This is still a project that's in progress, but I thought it'd be kind of cool for you guys to see it. I kind of had this idea when we were getting together and trying to figure out what we were going to talk about for the color lecture, and we kind of realized that we didn't really have like the best site about color. And I was thinking, well, wouldn't it be cool if there was like a website where if you wanted to learn about some topic, you could sort of upvote your favorite links, resources, videos, articles, etc. about that topic. So that's what the concept of the website is. And one of the first things I did when I was trying to figure out the visual design for this, I kind of was thinking about personality. All right, like what kind of personality do I want to have for a teaching website? Well, I know I want it to be really simple because this is all about like really quickly getting to that understanding. I want to help people understand about product design, for example, as quickly as possible. So I want to like emphasize this is going to be easy and straightforward. I want it to kind of feel fun, but I also knew that like educational websites sometimes feel like kindergarten. Like there's these building blocks. There's like an apple for teacher. There's a schoolhouse. I didn't want this to be for kids. I wanted this to be something that adults could use and would feel comfortable and enjoy using. So it's kind of a balance there that I had to strike. And I kind of thought maybe I'll do that with like colors. Like I think some of the colors I use can kind of give this sort of an elementary, approachable feel, but I don't have to use like cheesy like illustrations of apples and stuff. So one of the first things I do is I go on Dribbble. I have Evernote that I collect images that I really like when I see them, and I kind of went through and found things that I thought might relate to that feeling. This is an illustration from a famous Japanese animator. There's some illustrations. This one I really liked how there was sort of some texture to it. This is an example I thought of like bright color that was really well done, but not necessarily done in sort of like an elementary school way. I like that color. This is a great example, I think, of color that's well used in UI. So there's a chart here. It's really bright and colorful, but it's not overdone. So I thought that was really good inspiration. We call these mood boards often if we're working in like in a marketing project, but having these like things, collecting this inspiration is really, really helpful. This, I didn't really like the style of the drawing as much for what I was doing, but I really like those colors. This, I wasn't crazy about the colors, but I thought there was real fluidity to the illustration style. It kind of seemed like a bunch of people were hanging around doing dope shit in this picture, and so I wanted to like convey that style. This one, I sort of felt like there were a lot of these like simple pieces that were sort of composing into something more complex. As you'll see, a lot of this did not end up in the final product at all, but having this in my head is really helped me think simply about this. This is actually a painting that's in the People's Food Co-op at my grocery store in Carytown. This is sort of something that sort of was hitting on that. I was like, all right, I like how there's black along with these primary colors. I think that's kind of giving an interesting vibe. I really like this color. For some reason, these seem simple and approachable, but really compelling too. I think you could probably see this one in the result that I'm going to show you. This one I felt was really different from all the others, really low on color, but kind of had this feeling of floating. And I was kind of playing with space as a metaphor, like outer space, because I wanted to give them the feeling of flying or really moving. I thought this was a really cool one, didn't really relate to the others. There's some websites in here as well that I thought were really good, that I really like. Some of these I've saved years and years ago. This one I really just like the white against the blue with some of the other colors. And just a little shadow underneath his hair on his eye, kind of give it like a depth and dimensionality without getting too cheesy. Yeah? Yeah, great question. The question was, where do I come across these pictures? So like I said, one of them was literally I was in the grocery store and I took a picture on my phone because I saw that I liked it. Others are Dribbble. We've talked about Dribbble a little bit before, but sometimes if I'm bored, I'll like go through Dribbble and like favorite things that I really like that really catch my eye. I had like a phase where I did that a lot a couple of years ago, so I have a whole bunch that I've saved up. Whenever I see a picture just around the internet that I think really catches my eye, I'll save it to Evernote, like I said. There are also a lot of websites that I go to that show off like examples of really good modern web or app design. One that I was really enjoying was Typewolf, which is really just showing typography in use. I think Fonts in Use is another one. So there's other places. There's actually a lot of sites that sort of like claim to be design inspiration. And if you really don't have like a backlog of things that you've clipped along the way, those are good starting places. Again, this is just like a small sample of the things that I found. Actually, it's a small sample. You can see these are all the actual things that I clipped, but only the ones that I really liked, that I really thought had like relevance, I put in this folder. Let's see. This one really had nothing to do with it, but I just thought that was really, those colors again were really interesting. This is a website that I really liked. I thought it was really, really clear. And if you remember what this looks like, you'll see one that I basically just copied to make it look like this. And then there were a few other websites, specifically Stripe, you might be familiar with, is really great web design. Really simple, but also has this like bright feeling of color that I wanted to emulate. So I got a lot of screenshots of Stripe. You can see there's like this slash in the bottom here. So it's kind of got an angularity to it. For some reason that caught my eye, so I said okay. Sort of simultaneously when I was doing this, any thoughts on like gathering like visual inspiration? Questions? Just raise your hand or just call out. I might not be looking at you if you do. The next thing I did is I sort of had this idea about how this might work. So I started laying out the wireframes as we discussed. I was talking to these guys a little bit, but I gotta be honest, I didn't do as much user research during this project, so I probably should have. But I started simple. This is Comic Sans. I built this in Comic Sans just like I was asking you guys to do. The layout here, you can see I paid some attention to it, and I had a little fun with those icons. I really had to restrain myself from really getting too deep into visual design because I love doing it. So I had to like say, all right, we're just going to stay black and white when we're doing this. You can see $100 is red. This is sort of like one of those classic, you got to learn the rules before you can break the rules things. So I do keep myself in black and white as much as I can. But I knew that I wanted to try having color call out things that were paid services. So I put just a touch of color in there. This is the main site you would see when you're looking at a specific category of thing. I played with a couple different ways to do forms for adding a new category. I also had an idea here for how you could have like nested categories. Again, I added like some gray to the side just to see how that would feel visually. Oh, you can't even really see on here, but just trust me that right here is a gray strip that goes all the way up. I think, looking back, this was a mistake. This is a distraction. I wasn't really nailing the functionality of the wireframes. I was just playing with visual design a little bit, and in hindsight, I wish I'd kept them super separate. Let's see what else I got here. I started to combine these together into one sort of workflow. So you can see at the bottom here, this is sort of like the final version. You have color with some subcategories at the top. You have the list of all the things you want to upvote. There's a form at the bottom. It's just really simple. When you enter a URL, you get this, and I have some really red notes for myself. What if it's a duplicate? I have to figure out how that would work. Still haven't figured that out. And then once you click add it at the bottom here, you would get a modal window that shows this in depth and allow you to continue to tag it, maybe leave comments. You can see I have a little to-do list sort of scattered around here in red that really call out the things I haven't figured out yet. But each one of these sort of stacks is sort of like an iteration of this. I kind of combined some together, split some out, and came up with something as a wireframe here. Let's see. Now I'm going to show you some visual designs that I did for this. We're going to go through a bunch. So I sort of had these pictures, right, and I knew I wanted to do something colorful. I had a couple random ideas that came to me. We're going to move through a bunch real quick. This was just like an idea of using cards with heavy shadows. Skipped by that really quick. I was thinking, what if it was really light blue? This kind of feels sterile and boring. This is going to be an illustration of like people wearing sunglasses, but I never got to it. This kind of looks like the Mattel logo to me. Too kiddie. I added color to the other one. Didn't really work. I had this idea of making like these really bright background blocks of the different categories. I thought it was pretty cool. I also made a little light bulb. I tried to overlap in some colors because I saw that in one of my inspiration things and I just wanted to try it. I added a rainbow. Why not? Played with some typography. This is the one that I said kind of looks like that other guy's website. It's kind of a rip-off of it. I found this font that I like too that I started using. This is a really subtle one. This is a really clean one. This is sort of a subtle clean one. I added some color to the background. I like the look of this, but it wasn't that personality that I was going for. I wanted something really clean that also felt like you were powerful and also had an approachable feel to it. Here's a bunch more. You can see like sometimes it takes a lot of iteration. Here's a bunch of emojis slapped on it. Here's a grid in the background that I just took as a screenshot from some other app. What if there were there was a grid back there? I'm playing with different layouts here. Basically, I'm just like constantly duplicating the board that I'm working with. Here's the color ones with trying a couple different treatments to give it like a dark color to sort of make it less kiddie. I think it kind of works. Here's some logo concepts. And here's sort of the page that I started designing out, that actual page with the content itself. So I was thinking of calling it Learnt. So that's like the temporary logo there. It kind of looks like Walmart's logo. That's that icon that I took from the wireframes and I just colorized it to see what it would look like. It kind of worked. This is a more centered design in here. I've got a left aligned. This has got some gray background. It's a little hard to tell here. Just like throwing some confetti on there. That's one of 5 documents here. I think the trick here is that I just try to get through these ideas as quickly as possible. Here's an interesting one. I took some of those inspiration images and I just straight up like eyedroppered some colors. So these are some colors that come right from this guy. I just really like that blue guy for some reason. This is a really kind of a pretty picture of some of, I think, ocean currents. I snagged some colors out of to try to really get that color palette. Some other color palettes here that I just like started pulling from, and some other random ideas. Here, I had this really cool idea I thought of putting together a pillar. So you could have these concepts on a pillar. So I did a little sketch on my phone of these things living on a Greek pillar. There's a little bit more of a complicated one. I did this I woke up at night, or I was about to fall asleep, and I did this. Just tried to get it down really quickly. And then I did sort of a wireframe of that concept. And this is the first version of the pillars themselves. So the idea was all right, which is the best of all these options? Kind of like a podium. Here's a cleaned up version of that, slightly different colors. I added some of that confetti. Here's going back to the drawing board and getting some of those inspirations and pulling all those color palettes out again. And I'm trying to put together a design system. We're going to have a lecture on this with all the different colors, really trying to nail which colors I want. At this point, I sort of had a breakthrough realization that I didn't want to go the colors just really weren't working. It was really feeling like everything was too playful. So I tried reducing it, and I kind of landed on a metaphor of flight and like being at an airport almost. So I played with having a sky in the background with those pillars. I have an American Airlines logo here. It's some inspiration because I think it's kind of got that angularity. It makes me feel like I'm taking off, but it's still also really simple and approachable. Playing with calling it first class. Here's some more sky ones that I think are okay. I've got a really bright background here. And you can see I did a lot of iterations. They're slightly different colors. I'm working in that same illustration. This is a modal with a blue background with a little airplane. I also sort of was taking inspiration from those pins you get when you're a little kid on an airplane, trying to play with how I could make a logo that kind of looked like those. Actually, something I thought was pretty interesting when I was doing this is that I really took the concept of a metaphor for my design really seriously. I really said, all right, flight is kind of a metaphor for learning. You sit down, you take off, you're in the sky, it kind of feels like you're getting something done. But I also want to make flight feel approachable. It's got these really simple blocks. And I kind of ended up here. This is sort of the latest version of the flight application. You can see it's really similar to the wireframes. I'll show you the other wireframe for this in a second. Get it bigger for you. The first thing you do when you see this page is see the value that it gives to you. I had a version where I did an illustration. This one's just text. This is not Final Copy at all. The next thing you see is all these different categories. And so I really put the big bold blue around the top of these cards because I really wanted you to see the topic and make you feel like you had a whole deck of tickets so that you could learn anything in this category. I used some illustration just as simple emojis next to the different resources to indicate what kind of resource it was in case you like videos or books better. I put yellow, I'm playing with the positioning of these yellow number ones to really draw your eye to the top one because I think knowing the best way to learn X or Y is really important. And then down here you can see there's some lower fidelity sketches that I was working on. Oops. This is actually me and Kelsey from a separate video we shot for work, but I played with having a video in it, and then I kind of added these other pieces that explained all the different ways you could learn, and in kind of classic design process form. As I went on, I added more shit to this page, and I had a point where I realized it was just covered in stuff I didn't need, and I pared it all the way down to the simplest version of this index page. Just the headline, the cards, and a call to action to try to encourage people to sign up and join a community of people who will be upvoting things. You can see down here, this is the page that actually has a list for each topic that you can upvote and add things to. It's also really simple. After all this, after all these mood boards, after all these sketches, and after all these color palettes, there's really not that much here. So it's kind of hard to describe and make it feel like that whole process was worthwhile. But I think design really is often a process of just distilling things down. Like you have all these ideas, you want to sort of curate this list of things that are helpful to you with this idea, and then just constantly cut. It's almost like you're more of an editor than a creator. You want to create a lot and then spend most of your time focusing it into the thing that really matters most. And what I liked about this is that I could spend my time focusing on visual design here, because if you look at this modal with the comment section, or this list, or this homepage, it actually looks really, really similar to the original wireframe sketches. This is the sketches. These are the sketches I was doing for the homepage. This is what I did weeks before I did the other one. It's almost exactly the same. You can see even earlier I had a bunch of paper sketches that I sort of put together describing how this thing might work. There's a little dude with dark eyebrows. There's another early paper sketch of those pillars. There's a lot missing in this process. There's a lot we talked about in this class that didn't happen here. But I thought it would just be useful to see what's going on in like a real design project. This is not something I was doing for work. This is something I just sort of put together because I wanted to build something. And I think it reflects sort of the reality of what you actually spend your time doing and where you can sort of cut some corners to try to hit that point of delight. You guys have any questions about that? Okay. How are we doing on time? Almost done. We do have, as Ahmad said, a homework assignment. If you want to do it, you don't have to do it. If you've all caught up on your homework already, this isn't going to help your grade. But even if you have, I'd recommend that you do it because it's really going to help you if you want to build your design chops. We want you to just copy something that exists. So go on Dribbble, find a drawing that you really like, find a UI that you really like. It's Instagram, Spotify, whatever the case is, and try to make a copy of it. So on the top, you can see a really cool illustration. It was done by Kelsey for Farm Walks. And on the bottom is your version. It looks exactly the same because we want you to try to duplicate it as closely as possible. You might be surprised when you're working with color what the actual color is. Use the eyedropper tool, figure out what the color is, and use that exact color. You're going to see some shapes and vector tools. Draw those out. Often you'll build it and then you'll compare it to the original and you'll say, this doesn't look as good. Try overlaying them and changing the opacity so you can see if the ratio of your shapes is exactly like the ratio in the original image. Pay attention to shadows and subtle changes. There are a lot of shadows in that illustration, but it's hard to tell. Pay attention to light and how light affects shadows and color. If you choose to do this, start with a blank document and then submit a screenshot of the original thing and then your version PDF in Canvas as usual. Do next Monday if you choose to do it.
So it doesn't have to just be an illustration, right? It could be
Yeah, it could be an illustration, it could be an app, it could be a website, something that you like. Any questions on that? Okay, have a good break, guys.